So before letting you go from making this cat, I decided to have a little bit of fun with this and draw a simple saddle and model the saddle on top of the cat. And the reason for this is so that I could show you how to snap curves to an organic surface like an animal or a human. So you could go through the same process if you wanted to make clothing that follows the body's surface, and then you can kind of sculpt the drapery around the body. So this, what I've done in this scenario is I've made the cat a live mesh. So similar to what I had shown you in an earlier video. So I'm going to deselect everything and hit this magnet button, this fifth magnet button here on the status line, and that'll turn off the live mesh for the cat. To enable it, all you have to do is select the mesh that you want to be live to snap to, and hit this little magnet button, and the mesh will turn into this dark green color. All you have to do is grab the CV curve tool in this case, and I'm laying down. I've already traced out a couple of curves, and I'm laying down about 12 points. And what I'm going to do is loft between them, and notice that after clicking those through, and you pop back to perspective view, that they actually snapped and conformed to the topology of the cat. So it doesn't matter which view you edit them in; it's always going to be snapping to that cat, to the body, to the live mesh. And so I can get this first piece here, this first CV, snapped right to the center. And all I'm going to do is go through tweaking the CVs, trying to keep a nice even flow of points as best I can, so that my lofting, because I'm going to loft between these, so that the loft is as even flowed as possible. And just swapping between top view and side view, I'm going to make about 5 of these, maybe 6 of these. And I'm just going through adjusting them, and I'm sort of kind of keeping those points level with each other to the best of my ability, and keeping to the drawing. So it's just a simple design. I looked at a couple of saddle designs online, and jumped into Paint, threw over top of it, brought the reference back in here, and started tracing it. And I'm going to do about 2 more, and once I'm done with those, I'll be right back. Alright, so I've taken the time to kind of evenly space out those curves, and I'm matching the profile at the front, matching the profile, almost matching the profile in the back. There we go. And I went through tagging all of the vertices on the CV, and then I would scale them flat. So I'd just squeeze them like this, flat. So I'd grab those and squeeze it flat. So from here, I'll do the loft. So let's just double check it in the perspective view and see what we have. So everything's on the center axis, and a loft should be a simple matter. So let's do that. So let's get to Objects and select them in order, and run the loft. That's pretty clean. I really like that. Very little waviness in the lines, just sort of a graceful contours. This is the second time I've done this, so the first time around I had was very wiggly, so I wanted to get a nice clean looking surface. And I'd like to have a better spacing between the first one and the U handle, the tangent handle. So I'm gonna bring, so go to the top view, and I'm gonna bring those CVs in a bit more, and I'll tag. Let's hide the surface and tag those CVs. And just bring those in a little bit more. And see what we get with the lofted surface. And of course I can insert edge loops there if I need to later on, but I would like it to be decent before actually going with the thickening. So Let's go with the conversion now. So you can see it's clipping the cat quite a bit in certain areas due to the details or lack of details in the loft. So we could actually add a couple of spans to that. And also due to the lack of the number of curves to compensate for these larger changes in here. But I'm okay with the clipping because ultimately I'm going to convert this object. So I'm going to go to the lofted object. I'm going to convert it, and I'm going to do the general with quads per surface number of isoparms for both U and V. And then I'm going to take that thickened surface, or that polygon surface, and I'm going to thicken it with the standard methods. Something like that. So, pretty nice. So it's okay for that layer underneath to be clipping. It's good, actually. It kind of confirms a contact with the cat. And I also know that the cat's going to have subdivision surfaces turned on ultimately, so some of those will smooth out a bit. And this is definitely something, you definitely wouldn't want to do this if you're not done modeling the cat. So if you think you still need to do like anatomical changes and such, you would probably want to save this until you're absolutely happy with your cat. I'm going to mirror this over after removing this inside polygon like that, and I'm going to go to a duplicate, Control D, and I'm going to flip it on the X, -1. Oh, you know, I don't even have to do it that way. I could just do it as an instance. That's possible. I could do it here as an instance and do a -1 on X right here. That would work. And then if I need to do any further tweaking to this one, of course it'll populate to the opposing side. But since I think I'm pretty happy with this, I'm okay with it. I think what I'm going to do is just take the time to weld this seam together. So we'll combine it, and I will make sure all of these vertices double click that edge loop, make sure all of that are right on X0, and then merge the entire object. So edit mesh, merge with the option box, and let's reset that, apply, and it should be smooth with subdivision surfaces. It's very clean, looks good. So let's just square up the edges a little bit. Let's do some beveling on the edges. I guess I should have done all that before I actually did the instance. No matter, it's okay. And the reason why all the points are showing up in red is because symmetry, the reflection modeling is still turned on, so I'll turn that off. And let's confirm my selection, and then run the bevel on it. There we go. Great. And now I can start layering on the next part of the saddle, and I'll do a similar process of making this mesh live and snapping the curves to it to build up the next layer of the saddle. So now I've made that cloth on the underside of the saddle live, and I'm just getting these curves in place and confirming they're in place with the shaded viewport, and I'll go to the top view and make sure that my curves, these new curves, are, let's hide the old ones, make sure that these new curves are on the X0. So let's get that right on X0, and this one too, something, here we go. Kind of sensitive there with the drag tool and a live object, that if you don't move, if you don't go to CV mode right away, it tends to jump the object somewhere. I don't know where it goes, but just hit like that, see? So just hit undo and it'll pop right back. So my object is thickened, and I was concerned that maybe the bottom layer might confuse the live surface, but it seems to be okay. All the points seem to be on the top side of of the object that I want it to be on. So I'm snapping these to this second layer on the saddle. So that bottom layer is like some kind of cloth to my understanding. Not necessary on a lot of saddles that I saw, but it seems to be sort of an added comfort on the horse for the saddles that I saw. And anyway, flatten that out. It's amazing, even when I'm flattening it and scaling those points still snap, so I can get a nice straight curve as it follows the contours of the body. It's really quite nice. And I'll want to duplicate that one. So let's Control D, duplicate it, and let's translate it to the negative Z a little bit, or positive Z a little bit, using the channel box, and then go through the CVs, making sure they snap, and as soon as you grab one, it'll snap to the surface, the top side of the surface there. And let's go to the side view and make sure we grab those. And you can see when I switch between wireframe and shaded that as soon as I grab that CV, it snaps to the top of the surface, so it's really quite smart. This has got to be one of the best features in Maya, honestly. It's quick, it's easy to use, it's kind of a no-brainer. I feel a bit noobish for not having known about it earlier. But hey, it's never too late to learn new skills and learn new tools and take advantage of them. So I'm going to get all those CVs flattened, so I'll just squeeze that and go through the same process. So I'm going to make a couple more curves just like I had done before. I'll be right back. Okay, I think I'm ready for the loft now, and we'll take a look at it in perspective and see the curves. I'll snap to the cloth side of the saddle. I probably could use one right here. Let's see what I get without it, but I think I might need one in this spot right here. Let's see what we get. So I'll go to object mode and select each one in order and run the loft. Let's add a couple of spans. It's not too bad. A little bit of pushing in right there, which I thought would happen, and up here. I think, excuse me, I think it would be okay to go with the conversion. So I'm making the saddle now, and I went with a series of horizontal curves, and only this lower one right here I snapped using this object here as a live surface to snap this last curve. The rest are floating above to give the overall form and contours of the saddle, and then the ends are snapped in place. So what I'm going to do is loft these 5 curves and then put the loft surface onto a reference layer so I can't select it, and then go through sculpting the curves to get the overall shape of the saddle. So I'll get that set up and I'll be right back. Alright, so I've got the piece lofted and I have it on a layer, and that layer is referenced and named. I also have my filters set to components and only NURB CVs. So I'm going to go through grabbing points with soft selections and without soft selections. I'll toggle that on and off, and I'm going to sculpt the shape of this seat. And for the ends of each curve, I'm going to set the surface underneath it to be live, and then I'm going to go through the ends of each curve, snapping them along, and I'm going to use tweak to do that. So it'll just grab right on top of that surface, just the ends, and then make sure that this last one here is actually right on top of the surface. And I'm just giving them a wiggle to make sure that they're actually snapped straight to the surface. Just a little bit of movement with the tool and it'll snap right on. Let me grab this last one. There we go, got it. Okay, and then I'm going to make sure that this last curve, this profile is actually right on the x-axis, and then I can make any final corrections later on. And now I'm going to go through making changes to the saddle, and I can, get this seat flush right onto that surface using the live snapping, the live mesh, and get some good corners in there. And then I'm going to turn off the live and then go about sculpting the rest of the contours. I think it's pretty easy to see why I've chosen NURBS and curves for this. So I can just pull on this piece right here. In subdivision surfaces, that would be a problem, with the amount of... it's just so much easier to see exactly what you're going to be getting. And it's just so much more attractive. And so then when I go to the process of converting, so when I actually convert this, I'll then be able to get a good clean network of quads, maybe even do a little poly reduction on it. So much easier to map out because it's just laid out so well. And I learned this practice years and years and years ago when I was working for a client who was inventing products that conformed to the human foot. And I learned very quickly what are the best practices for modeling objects that can conform to the human body. And that's why I also prefer this method to for making clothes for the human body, and then run the dynamics on it to drop those clothes onto the body. And of course, as you already know, if I want more detail in this saddle at this point, at this level, all I need to do is add more points to the curves, insert knots, and I'll have more to work with. And it really does help to have the surface that I'm watching, so I'm watching the contours of this surface as I'm sculpting it. It really does help to have that on a reference layer so that you're not constantly accidentally selecting it. It really does pay off. So I've decided to add a little bit more detail to my curves to give me a little bit more control over them. I'd like more control at the top end of the saddle. So I've chosen insert knot for the entire curve, and I'm going to do a value of 1, and that's going to more or less double my point count. So when I hit apply, I've got all of these extra points along the path. And I'm going to do that for this one as well, and that one. So give them all a little bit more detail. So when I look at this in wireframe now, and if I increase the span, so maybe 2, there it's starting to look a little bit like what the wireframe might look like. So, taking a good look at the flow of the saddle, not just the contours and shapes of it, but the flow of the polygons gives me an idea of how easy it would be to texture, how easy it would be to deform. I would like these edges that are flowing this way. If I'm going to have that kind of compression right there, maybe slide some of these points over so they're not so compressed right here because there's a couple of gaps, and just sort of even it out a little bit. Same thing over here. I would like a little bit more detail in this area, so I think I'll go through each curve inserting knots within this area. So be right back. Yeah, so that looks a little bit better. So I added a couple in this area, a couple right here. I just grabbed curve point locations and chose to add a couple at the selection area. So I'm going to go through and continue cleaning this. And from the top view, I can also go through grabbing some vertices and then scaling them flat so to straighten them out. And from the top view, that won't have much of that won't hurt the form much. Just shift things just a little bit, which I can adjust later. And I find that easier to work with, much more predictable. And I can set all of those to be x0, so they're right flat on the x-axis. And we'll grab those as well. And I made sure to be careful to hide all other curves in my scene so that I don't accidentally grab and flatten others, because I have my filters set to only grab CVs, so that means any CVs in the scene, unless the object is referenced, any CV in the scene will be grabbed. Okay, so now I'm getting close to the shape I'm trying to achieve, and I want to go one step further and convert this now so that I can visualize it in polygons and maybe increase the divisions long ways, maybe like 48, maybe 50. And then what I want to do is mirror that over with the instancing. So that I can see more or less what it will look like at the seam. And then I'll continue to model it with the curves. So I just want to get a sense of what this thing's going to look like. Because it's awfully difficult to see the other half when it's not there. So I'm going to put these two pieces on a reference layer as well. Like so. So they can't be selected. And I'll go back to tweaking CVs until I get this right. Okay, so here it is. I just hid the curves. I'm just looking at the two polygon objects by themselves, not thickened, not merged, not combined. And I think that it looks pretty good. So, I've got a good place for the leg to fit and pad for the foot to hit. I'll explain this pad in a minute. Yeah, it's pretty decent. And I think I'll just move forward with the combining. And let's turn off the reference for those objects. And I'll combine it. Merge it. And could even take this row of vertices right down the middle. Well, it looks like I may have to backtrack just a little bit here. It looks like I've got a little bit of a problem where this edge isn't quite, it's not quite on the x-axis, so let me grab that from there and double click that one and set that to x0. There we go. And then go through with try that again. Combine and merge. Okay, that's a bit better. And so I've got a little bit of a seam here, and I think the really quick way to remove that seam would be to double click that edge that's running down the center and simply remove it. And if we take a look at it now, the seam is pretty much gone, and in subdivision surfaces is, not very visible. And if you want to put an edge right back there, just use if you need an edge to go back there, like to cut it in half when you're doing a texturing or something, insert an edge loop with the multiple edge loop, and number of edge loops is 1, and that will cut it right in half. So now we put it back. And let's go to object mode, subdivision surfaces. Looks pretty good. Looks pretty much the same as it did in the NURBS, maybe even a little bit better. And from here, I wouldn't do much more than thickening it. Maybe getting some of these points to actually snap down and touch the cloth or the leather that's underneath it. But from here, let's just do the extrusion and thicken it with local translate. Let's do, we're going to have to do a negative 0.25, and even then that might be a little too much, but let's try negative 0.5, 1.15, and we'll go with that. That's okay. A little bit of clipping in here. I have to clean that up. Again, push it down a little bit back here. Maybe clean up the corners a little bit, soften them. And at the same time go through, in addition, go through and bevel edges that you want to square up. Turn off reflection to hide those red points. Could have done the thickening and could have done the bevel before instancing it over to the other side and combining it, but it's just as well to do it now. And then of course you could go through not only beveling the edges, selected something I didn't want. Okay, of course you could go through beveling the outside edges, that makes sense. So that in subdivision surfaces it stays nice, catches a bit of light. But you could also go through and bevel where you want creases in the leather. For example, I just wanted to round out that edge. For example, if you want like this back here to stand out a little bit more, you could grab that edge. You know, maybe not the entire edge, maybe just like up to there, something like that. And then I may just be better suited to cut the object in half and mirror this work over, so I don't have to constantly figure out, you know, if I have the same edge loop. But let's just bevel it anyway, so you can see what I'm talking about. So you bevel that, and of course when you bevel it, you're adding 3 edge loops, which is going to start to form creases across the leather. So you can start to see those little details. Other things that we could do is we could then go through live snapping curves, and then have like a bit of torus, and instance that bit of torus across the curve to create stitching. We could do a little bit of a cylinder, maybe to do rivets or metal studs. There's all sorts of interesting things we could do. And this pad right here that I never did record, that was really quite simple. What I did is I went to the side view and referencing my drawing. I didn't use curves to create that one. I actually used just a big old create polygon tool. So like, let's make the saddle live, and let's say there's some kind of detail like right in this area. All I did was go to mesh and create polygon tool, and drew out the pattern of whatever it is that that's sitting there. And then I went through the process of extruding it and offsetting it a little bit, and then I would thicken it a little bit just to push it towards me like that, and then I would extrude it again, offset it again, push it towards me a little bit more just to round it out a bit, and then I would delete it, that polygon, and then in the case of some crashing vertices, like right here I've got some crashing vertices, I would just separate those just a little bit, not a lot. And be careful when you're tweaking those points, because they are going to snap to the mesh below it. So I would turn off my live, and then I would go to my append to polygon tool, and I just filled across until I had quads. So I just did that. And if I needed like better connections, like this will be a broad edge to a skinny edge sort of deal, and another one right here. If that's not enough, then I went in here and I got my insert edge loop tool, and I divided a little bit over here. And it's not running to the other side because there's a big end gun on the bottom side. So I don't have to worry about that. And then I just go to my append to polygon and fill it in like that. And I've got a triangle down here, and if you don't want a triangle down there, again, just insert an edge, like right about there, and then maybe tweak it just a smidge, and then append the polygon again, and that fills it in, and then you could do additional detailing and modeling and whatever, subdivision surfaces, what have you, and then that thing, I just threw a material on it, and there it is. It matches that little bit of the saddle quite well, actually. And the more detailed you are, the more edge loops you're adding in there, the more vertices you add, the more accurately it'll match. So I think making this is quite a bit of fun. And then, of course, you could just instance it to the other side. So now you have two. Lots of fun, really, and just adding these details just makes the character just that much more interesting, and having taking advantage of those NURBS curves is just gorgeous, and getting these flowing, beautiful curvatures conforming to the body of the cat and conforming to the body of the character that's going to sit on the cat. So the cat is done, and or at least as done as it's going to be for these videos. And now it's time to package this up, organize it, delete history, organize layers, and get this thing ready for referencing for our final render. So I'm going to start by unhiding all objects in the scene that are hidden, and that would be under Display, Show, All. And I'm going to filter out filter all objects off, and then turn on NURBS curves and NURBS surfaces, and I'm going to marquee over everything. And that's make sure I'm showing there we go, make sure I'm showing NURBS curves as well, and then marquee over everything. And so all the curves and all of the surfaces in the outliner should be selected, and I'm going to package those into, I think it would be best if I package those into a group. So I'm going to group those and name it something straightforward, surfaces and curves. And for the remaining pieces, I'm going to filter off and only select polygon surfaces and select all of that stuff. I have an extra saddle here from work I had done earlier. Let me discard that one. I don't want that one. And I have extra polygon bits from, well, let's hide the surfaces and curves first of all, so let's just hide that group and inspect it. Looks good. It looks like I grabbed the eyeballs, so let me get those back. These two objects, which were referenced, and of course make sure I can select NURBS surfaces, and there we go, grab those eyeballs, NURBS sphere and a NURBS sphere. So those eyes I want to be in my cat group. There we go, and the rest can be hidden. And then the polygon objects, so let's just select those, grab all of those, and let's just do a simple group, so that'll grab all of those pieces and move that group into the cat group. And everything else should just be junk objects. So when we freeze the history, delete the history on the cat group, let's do that. A lot of those should disappear. Yep, a lot of them did disappear. And then the remaining are just junk groups. So in other words, they were created during like combination processes. The saddle group, let's keep that. Let's drop that in the cat group. That's junk. That's junk. And that one's junk. So let's open up the cat group and organize that one. So I've got the saddle group, which means I've got saddle pieces, and I've also got right eye, left eye. Let's get those two things into its own group and call that eyes group. And I'm going to leave the eyes as NURBS spheres because they just tend to look better. I like them better that way. And let's delete those transform groups. We no longer need those. Let's see what's inside here. So we've got 2 empty groups underneath this group 5. Let's delete that. Okay, and then here are the remaining polygon surfaces, so polygon objects. So I'm going to name these. I'll be right back when I'm done. Actually, before I name them, the cat should be combined. So these 2 halves should be combined and merged. And then any remaining pieces, like little bits like this on the head, go through and fix those. Merge vertex tool. And if there's any if there's any bit of a seam showing up like here on the cranium, go ahead and do any little bits of modeling that need to be done to bring that together. And here's a tip. Notice that there's a hole here in the neck where 2 points didn't merge. And notice how in subdivision surfaces this little curve shows up. And think of those as arrows. And they always point at the problem. So just keep that in mind. So when you're toggling between faces and subdivision surfaces, these arrows always point at the problem. So the problem is there's a little hole right here and I need to merge it. And the cat doesn't need to be absolutely perfect. Like I still have a seam here at the bottom, a little bit at the head and such. I am going to be referencing this cat, so I can bring it into the render scene, see what it looks like. I'm probably going to have to fix a couple things. And because it's going to be referenced, I can always go back to the original scene, make modifications, and it'll populate into the, propagate to the render scene. So I'm going to finish the naming process. Okay, so I'm done with the cat group, the cat mesh, which is just one object underneath that, and then the saddle group, and that has the cloth mesh, leather strap, foot pad left and right, and then the seat itself, and then the eyes group left and right. And the eye was an instance, if I remember correctly, so I'm going to come over here and convert it instance to objects, so now they're separate. And it looks like that destroyed the previous eye, so I'm going to duplicate this eye and put a negative number on in front of the X on the transform, and that will pop it to the other side. And I'll just make them children of the eyes group by themselves, and then I can do any kind of rigging later, and I'll just finish naming them. And notice I'm using _L_R for left and right, and I'm going to be very consistent about that for things that need to be identified as left and right, and it makes it easy to find them if I want to capture or select all the objects that are on the left or all the objects that are on the right. This makes it easy to do that. And then last bit is are the layers. I want to make sure that the layers are indeed hiding and showing what they need to be, and so that I can set those to references if I need to. And also the eyes, which I probably broke. Nope, they're still there. Good. And then the instance, but we don't need the instance layer anymore, so we can right click on that and choose to delete it. And then the cat mesh layer. Okay, we need to add the cat to the cat mesh layer. So I'm going to select the cat body and choose add selected objects to that layer. So there we go. All done. And it's ready to be saved and referenced. Now, in order to preserve the work I had just done a little while ago, an hour ago, I'm going to save this as a new name, and then this new file is going to be referenced for my final render. So I'll have the old file where I can go back and make changes if I need to, just in case, as a backup. We'll see you in the next chapter.